Hello World Wide Web, I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with the best hair. And barring any further delays, I should be able to get this review out in October, so... Oh well, spooky story time. Today's review is of a movie that is in and of itself a take on a tale, an urban legend. The legend of Candyman, the hook-handed killer from beyond the grave that will strike you down if you dare say his name 5 times in a mirror. Which is actually not an urban legend. Now, Clive got a lot of grief when this was coming out, saying that he was a white man capitalizing on an African-American tale for his own profits and gain. Slight issue being that Clive is the one that wrote the whole damn thing. In the mid-'80s, actually, as the short story The Forbidden, which is included in Volume 5 of Clive Barker's Books of Blood. That tale, likewise, is about another tale. In the story, Candyman is an urban legend, and our protagonist, Helen, decides to study Candyman and write about it. However, her research into the legend and its connection with recent murders sends her down a rabbit hole of even more murders and even more legends. And what is this season of spookiness for, if not for tales about brutal murder and hauntings? So, let's take a look at Candyman. That's it, we're just taking a look. As any proper horror tale, the first step is to set the mood. Candyman accomplishes this with a technically impressive shot of what Grand Theft Auto 6 might have looked like had they kept the camera angle the same, which in 1992 was only able to be shot so stable due to recent advances in camera technology. Along with that unusual establishing shot, there is the soundtrack, of course. I mean, yes, they're obviously just trying to sound spooky and unsettling, but they are being creative about it, and I can respect that. If spooky music doesn't do it for you, don't worry. Candyman himself, Tony Todd, gives a little voiceover explaining exactly why you should be at least mildly creeped out.
With my hook for a hand, I'll split you from the groin to your gullet.
And you don't even want to know what I'm gonna do with my motherfucking chainsaw hands! So, after enough imagery that can't help but remind me of Nicolas Cage for some reason, the story proper starts and we are introduced to Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen, for about 8 seconds before we launch into another tale, a spooky urban legend, with your classic teen babysitter setup.
Billy pulls up on his motorcycle. No, she wasn't even going out with Billy, she was actually going out with Michael.
Yeah, but Michael had that problem where you just couldn't talk to him. And the stabbing teenagers to death every Halloween. And at least Billy's got a cool bike. Billy's a bad boy, but the babysitter decides, it's time to get rid of this whole virginity thing, because after all, when has that ever had any negative repercussions in a horror movie? First though, let's see how much of a badass he really is. After all, people say that if you say Candyman 5 times in a mirror, he'll show up and murder the fuck out of you! So, Billy only says it 4 times. Oh well.
But she said his name the last time.
Candyman.
She turned out the lights.
And stubbed her toe on the doorway real bad. Probably should have just left the lights on. Or the spectral slasher villain materialized and killed the shit out of her! And the baby! Just in case you had any doubt the murderous Mirror Man was in fact a bad guy. The bad boy, though, he went crazy and ran like hell from there. At least that's one version of the story, as Helen's friend and colleague, Bernadette, played by Casey Lemons, is interviewing someone else who says the babysitter is the one who threw the baby in the oven. No time to slow down, we have to introduce even more urban legends and characters with Helen's husband, Trevor, played by Xander Berkeley, giving a lecture about the old alligators in the sewer myth.
They are the unself-conscious reflection of the fears of urban society. That's lunch.
Ah, movies. Always joining the college lectures in the middle of the most interesting part, only for it to be interrupted by the bell ringing. Really bad timing there. And especially odd considering I don't even think colleges have bells. We also spend a peculiarly long amount of time on one of the professor's students, Stacy, played by Carolyn Lowry.
You don't really think?
No, of course not.
I do. If you ain't fucking yet, chances are you will be before the credits roll. The thing that really upsets Helen is that Trevor wasn't supposed to start the urban legend curriculum until after she publishes her work on Candyman, which Trevor points out she's taken her sweet time with, and he can't avoid his job forever. But how is she supposed to expedite this work anyway? It's not like some random school janitor will just tell her where she can go look for Candyman directly.
You live over at Cabrini. My friend told me about it.
Cabrini Green.
Yeah, in the projects.
Except for the fact that it seems that this supernatural killer pays rent and isn't particularly well off financially. Henrietta, played by Barbara Altson, calls her friend Kitty, played by Serena C. Grant, to relay to Helen her story about the Candyman. Seems a lady by the name of Ruthie Jean had a problem one day where some asshole was trying to break into her place through the walls. So, calling 911, they ignored her pleas for help, but they did finally believe her story when they got there and found out that someone came through the walls and murdered her.
She was killed with a hook.
Candyman killed her.
Yeah, but I don't know nothing about that.
Oh, don't worry, there's nothing people find more trustworthy than anonymous sources. Helen shares this information with Bernadette, and her friend is not so enthusiastic about this angle. She signed up to write about spooky urban legends, not talk about actual people who really died. However, Helen isn't letting this go so easily. She also deduced that the very condo she lives in today was originally built as a housing project, just like Cabrini Green. Also, fun fact, the bathroom mirrors don't have walls behind them, providing the perfect place for some spooky murderer to invade and kill.
You don't believe all that nonsense anyway, do you? I don't.
I mean, this part of the story was kind of based on the real-life murder of Ruthie McCoy in 1987. Killer came through the wall behind her bathroom mirror in her Chicago project apartment.
Candyman, 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 Candyman.
Oh, you mean the Candyman thing? No, the Bloody Mary stuff is pure superstition. Unless you're talking about the real-world Candyman from the 70s, but that really has nothing to do with this movie. For one thing, that guy actually used candy. Helen's the only one to complete the summoning ritual, but all that happens is she gets to tease Bernadette for being chicken. However, that night...
What's the matter?
Oh, Trevor.
She is attacked by a cheap jump scare. True horror. Just not the way you want. That horror comes later, when Helen and Bernadette decide to take this investigation to the streets. Mainly because this city block has seen better days, and these two stand out, to say the least.
Hands up, people! 5-0, coming out the back door! Police!
It's okay, they think we're cops. They're not gonna follow us.
Oh, I get it. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. Like bears, or fanboys. Nevertheless, they aren't exactly welcome here, as we see when Helen presses forward, taking all kinds of pictures like this is a fucking museum or some shit.
Sorry.
Oh, damn, missed the action shot. Excuse me, miss, could you come out and do the jump scare again, please? More energy this time. Moving along, Helen points out that yes, this housing project does indeed have the same exact floor plan as her condo. Therefore, they find the unit where the woman was murdered and the secret passage behind the mirror.
I'm just gonna go through, and when I get back, we're out of here.
You gotta
I
be
promise.
kidding.
I mean, wouldn't it just be easier to go around to the door to the other apartment and get in that way? But that wouldn't be as spooky as we see Helen slip through, taking so many pictures of everything that she promptly runs out of film right before encountering the much more impressive Shrine to Candyman, complete with a little offering of sweets to the sweet. How sweet. Only one thing to do now.
Bernadette! Sorry.
Jump scare your friend. It's the only way they can really be sure they can trust you in a horror movie. Bernadette is considerably less enthusiastic about them just stepping out for more film and coming back, and insists instead they get the fuck out of there. However, on their way out, they run into the one tenant from earlier, Anne-Marie, played by Vanessa Williams. After Helen explains that she's not a cop or some gawking fucknugget, but in fact is writing a paper on the urban legend of Candyman, Anne-Marie agrees to talk to her for a bit. It's a bit more difficult than it has to be, considering she's got a baby to take care of. But as it was her neighbor that got gutted, she recalls how she remembers that night. She called 911, but no one came. They were too afraid of this killer who can come at you right through the walls.
They ain't never gonna catch him.
Who? Candyman.
Man, this is a weird comedy. Also, note the jarring contrast between the ghetto we were just in and Helen's close friends in the lily-white community. They're out to dinner, and the paper that Helen and Bernadette are working on comes up because they happen to be seated across from none other than the man who wrote the book on Candyman. No, not Clive Barker. Professor Philip Purcell, played by Michael Culkin. Hearing they intend to quote-unquote bury him, he decides to go into Candyman's story time and exposit some more backstory for the audience. It seems he was the child of slaves, but actually was pretty well off himself, became an artist, was incredibly talented, and got some great commissions.
That he was commissioned by a wealthy landowner to capture his daughter's virginal beauty. Well, of course, they fell deeply in love, and she became pregnant.
Goddamn, he captured it all right. When it comes to recounting what happened to him after, well, we relight the scene around Helen's eyes to really drive the horror home here. Get some ne'er-do-wells, gang up on the poor bastard, and chop his hand off! Of course, only to start. Why stop there when there's handy-dandy beehives nearby?
They smashed the hives and stole the honeycomb and smeared it over his prone, naked body.
But to their horror, it was then that they found out he was actually kind of into that. But not quite as into the swarm of bees that attacked, stinging him to death in horrifying humiliation. With that out of the way, they burned his dead ass to ashes and scattered them about Cabrini Green. There are some discrepancies as to exactly when this took place and when the town was built, but details. Helen returns to the shrine to snap her shots, but on her way to meet back up with Anne-Marie, she is informed that the woman is not home right now. Informed by Jake, played by a very young DeHuan Guy. Of course, the kid's got far more information, such as the locals piling up a huge mound of scrap for the climax bonfire, and oh yeah, Candyman lives in that bathroom right over there. Jake had a friend who couldn't hold it, but after going in, Candyman ripped his dick right off. It's kind of extreme, don't you think? No bother, Helen's not afraid, and goes to take pictures of the fecal graffiti. And the toilet full of bees! That runs into a much bigger problem.
I hear you looking for Candyman, bitch. Well, you found him.
Ooh, forget ringing in the ears, motherfucker just knocked a whole damn pipe organ into her head. Fortunately, they don't do any serious damage, just leaving her there unconscious, allowing Helen the opportunity to pick Terrence Riggins out from the lineup and put the so-called Candyman behind bars, thanks to the help of Detective Valento, played by Gilbert Lewis.
Only reason why we didn't bring him in before because we couldn't find anyone to testify.
I mean, there was mountains of evidence, and forensics aren't that archaic in this decade, but, I mean, not using the old witness testimony or killer confession method just feels wrong. Jake is shaken by this, though, not only because Helen broke her promise of not telling anyone about Jake knowing about Candyman, but the hard truth that it was just a man, and Candyman isn't real.
Candyman ain't real?
I'm sorry, Jake, but it's true. Candyman isn't real. Just like the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, and healthy options at fast food joints. Don't worry about that shiner, though, as Helen shows Trevor her Wolverine healing powers that are taking care of that in record time. Also, we have time to reflect on that little plot hole called accurately depict reality.
2 people get brutally murdered and the cops do nothing. Whereas a white woman goes in there and gets attacked and they lock the place down.
Yeah, I know.
Oh god, I just realized if I ever run for public office, I'm just going to sit there complaining about everything wrong with society without actually bothering to fix any of it. I guess I would make an okay politician. The important thing is they managed to save Helen's pictures. Not only that, but Bernadette says several publishers are very interested in her research into Candyman. So all well that ends well, right? Well, unless, of course, we're counting the story of Candyman, who, haunts the shit out of this place.
Helen.
Yes?
I'm coming to get you. I don't need a taxi. Get my car. It's fine. You are mine. You're probably looking for another lady. Go look around for another Helen who called Uber or something. This, however, at a smooth 45 minutes in, is our first taste of the real Candyman, Tony fucking Todd, with his poetic and downright romantic take on the spectral killer. Don't expect a Jason Voorhees-style slaughter or Freddy Krueger aggression. This man's methods are a different kind of poetic.
Be my victim. Be my victim.
In fact, fact, I think the only other killer in fiction I can compare him to is Asmodeus, the big fucking snake in Redwall. Handily, Candyman also explains that his very afterlife existence depends on people believing in him, and so her spoiling the legend with that Scooby-Doo mystery solving earlier kind of fucks with that. Hypnotized, possibly literally, Helen blacks out and awakens in a far more confusing situation. Covered in blood, Anne-Marie's dog brutally decapitated in front of her. So pick up that cleaver and say hi to old Anne-Marie.
Marie? No! You bitch! No! You bitch!
Whose baby is also missing, and there's just something about walking in all calm, covered in blood, wielding a bloody cleaver. The only way that could be a worse look is if she was wearing a scream mask. If anything, it wasn't quite as incriminating as the look of Helen chopping Anne-Marie's arm and mounting her screaming with a cleaver in hand right before the police show up. Really not doing herself any favors here. This is so incriminating, even cuddly old Detective Valento ain't fucking around.
Before I ask any further questions, would you like to have counsel?
Yes or no?
Answer me, woman! I'm supposed to be at home with my wife watching Wheel of Fortune, not sitting here listening to your failed audition for Chopped! Don't worry, though. She's only suspected of breaking and entering, animal cruelty, assault, and kidnapping. That's nothing some handy-dandy bail can't fix, and she's back home. Still being investigative, of course, but this time with warm baths, beer, and a box of Marlboros. Also, she can leisurely look over her film from Cabrini Green, seeing all the lovely images she snapped, even if in one. There is a mysterious figure she did not see at the time! What could it mean? Okay. You know, I honestly thought at this point I was just immune to jump scares, but not gonna lie, that did get me a little. Well, what do you know? She's still being haunted by Candyman, who, well, I can't really say he continues to torment her, rather than try to lay out the details of the whole horrifying murder deal. If she doesn't go along with it, that missing baby, yeah, he'll die instead. But if she dies by his hook, then the urban legend will also speak of her, meaning as long as the deal is a similar one to his own, she really doesn't have that much to fear about death.
Come with me and be immortal.
Jeez, could you at least be gentle, Mr. Candyman? That thing really smarts. But what's this? Helen's homicide is interrupted by Bernadette at the door. Helen tries to tell her to leave, but considering she's gargling Bernadette's name out in obvious pain, that has the opposite effect. Oh my god. Why does that remind me of Lambert's death in Alien? When the dust settles, wow, would you look at that? Helen comes back from blacking out to find the police everywhere and her best friend horribly murdered in the living room. Man, that name has never been more ironic. Well, they're not taking any more chances with Helen, drugging the woman before dragging her off to the asylum. Well, it's looking bad, but she should be fine as long as she can convince them that she's not crazy.
What do the good know? Except what the bad teach them by their excesses.
Okay, Candyman, shit's confusing enough without you bringing up the paradox of evil in the middle of everything. Naturally, Helen screaming that the killer is here and he's hiding under her bed only manages to convince the doctors to up her dosage, and she's out cold. Eventually, after she regains her senses to some extent, she is brought before Dr. Burke, played by Stanley DeSantis.
Now, for the past month.
Month?
Yes. We've been stabilizing you on a heavy dosage of Thorazine.
Yeah, we're so concerned about your mental health and well-being that we've been pumping you full of antipsychotics, but there's no reason not to tell you about that and the time frame. I mean, it's really nothing, isn't it? A bit more disturbing for her is when they show her the surveillance footage of when she came in, screaming about the killer being in the room as she flailed around, clearly completely alone, but despite how it looks, Helen doesn't change her story. As a matter of fact, she says she can prove she's not crazy and summon Candyman right here. Else there just so happens to be a handy-dandy mirror in the office, so she says his name 5 times. Which summons him so hard, the quality of the film takes a hit as well. Or that might just be because the uncut version of this scene is the unrated version of the movie. On the plus side, seeing as she's still restrained, Dr. Burke being murdered and mutilated with her tied to a chair should be convincing enough to clear her name. Oh great, now I'm not sure if she's being haunted or just crazy. Leaning more towards crazy though, considering she decides the best course of action is to escape out the window, only to escape back in a window and assault a nurse, stealing her uniform while slipping away. Right to the first damn place the police are obviously going to check, her old home, which goes even worse than you might think.
Get out of my home.
Trevor!
Oh, would you look at that? He's boning the hot young co-ed. What a shocker.
What were you gonna do, Trevor? Wait till I got out before you told me?
Oh, let's be real here, Helen. Most likely he was boning her long before you got locked away. Now that we've established the police think she's a killer, the state thinks she's insane, her friend is dead, and her husband has abandoned her, Helen has nothing left. Nothing, that is, except for Candyman and trying to save the baby. Heading back to Cabrini Green, facing considerably less resistance this time, she finds the Phantasm's lair and Candyman. Just kind of sleeping there.
Helen.
That's the thing about dead people. You can't really kill them. It's already happened. Which brings us back to their little bargain. Helen gives herself to Candyman, and he promises the baby will be unharmed. And this has got to be the most damn overtly sexual horror kill I've ever seen. Up until he exposes his bare ribcage and exudes bees everywhere! Or, hell, never mind, this is also looking kinda kinky. Oh, why is Helen so damn important to him?
It was always you, Helen. It was always you.
Because the woman he got pregnant and brutally murdered over, that was her in a past life. She was reincarnated. Does kind of make the whole be killed and become an urban legend to gain immortality thing kind of superfluous. But what's this? We have but 10 minutes of movie remaining and they still haven't set the bonfire yet. And wouldn't you know it, Helen can hear the baby's cries within, so she rushes down there to save him, taking Candyman's hook to help, which just so happens to be the one thing Jake sees go into the pile. Okay guys, I'm like 6 years old, but check this out. I saw the hook. I think it's dark, but I definitely saw someone slinking around in the big pile, so let's just assume it's Candyman and burn him to death. Yes, again. But this is all part of Candyman's plan. He brought the baby down here to lure Helen into the trap so that they may romantically burn to ashes together. But Helen still wants to have some redemption before the credits roll, so she stabs him with a flaming stake and crawls through the fires herself to deliver the missing baby to his mother, Anne-Marie, before succumbing to the flame. So, happy ending! I mean, Helen's dead, but the baby's alive, and besides, Trevor still has his hot young thing, but even he is feeling heartache. Sure, his new fling's attractive and all, but he used to have the whole loving wife deal who didn't even call him out for his infidelity, and now that's gone. And all he can do is cry out her name in mourning into a mirror 5 times. Also, major epilepsy warning. Strobe lights from hell coming right up in 3, 2, 1.
What's the matter, Trevor? Scared of something?
Just incredibly disoriented. Jesus Christ, Helen, what did you do to your hair? So move over, Candyman. There's a new mirror-based killer in town. Crispy Helen. The end. But does that mean that Trevor gets to be immortal too? This mirror-based killer thing is kind of confusing. You know, I'm just going to not say any names in front of a mirror from now on. Anyway, that was Candyman. It's good. And confusing. I mean, I get the angle, but Candyman is one of those killers where if you want to explain it, it helps to have a spreadsheet available. Fortunately, you don't really need all the information all at once for the story to be interesting and the horror to creep up. While it was being accused during production of potentially reinforcing negative stereotypes, the setting really worked as the modern-day old dark house, confronting the viewer with said prejudices firsthand. Also, it's kind of hard to have the conversation when you're not even allowed to bring up the topic, but I digress. What I was impressed with in this movie was actually the combination of the new for the time cinematography techniques and classic ones. At times it feels like watching a film from the 40s with the emphasis on framing, specific lighting, and slow, deliberate zooms. Nice little touches to help the atmosphere. And that atmosphere, well, it's creepy, but honestly, it's not as horrifying as it could be. We get some great gore effects and a nice sense of dread for a lot of it, but while imposing, Candyman is just a little too pleasant of a phantasm to really come off as being that threatening. I always felt like Helen was in over her head, but not necessarily in any real danger. Overall, Candyman is a must-watch for fans of cinema, and an excellent horror movie with a unique combination of urban legends, spooky tales, supernatural horror, and real-world terrors that mesh pretty well. The only downside is, maybe I'm just incredibly desensitized at this point, but it really didn't reach that peak frightfulness at any point for me, coming in at 4 mouthfuls of bees out of 5. I mean, the movie could easily be a 5, as is, but, I mean, it's like how I will not rate a horror movie lower because I found it horrifying. I'm not gonna rate one high that I didn't. Thank you all for watching. I've been Shado. And remember, don't get reincarnated. I've never seen it end well.
We're here looking for Candyman, bitch.